Hello, people of the internet. My name is JD Shadow. I have a bit of a thing I want to address to people, and it has something to do with what's been going on this past month and why I haven't been putting out videos and why you are hearing this right now. It is because about a month ago, my cousin, who I have known pretty much all my life, had passed away. As with all deaths, it is not an easy task in order to move on, especially those that you have become close to. And as I said, I've known this person pretty much all my life. She was somebody who helped other people out. She was somebody who had a lot of admirers and a lot of friends and family members who adored her, myself included, and so did my immediate family. Usually deaths do affect me, but not that much. I know that at some point that we all will leave this mortal coil and we will go to a better place. This, however, rocked me in ways that I did not think it would. Not because, hey, I didn't love her or anything like that. Obviously I did. However, this got me to really start thinking about certain things. And one of those things is, one, what would happen when we die? What do we see when we first die? When we die, when we perish, when we leave this mortal coil, what actually happens to our souls? What really happens to our bodies? And what do we see right after we die? Obviously, this is a question that will never be answered because the only people who do know have already left the mortal realm. But there is another thing that I do want to address, and that is a reflection of who I am, who I have been, and what I perceive to be and what I strive to be in the future. A reflection of the things I have done, things that I should be doing, and things that I am doing now. Let's be quite honest. We are never perfect. We make mistakes, we make errors in judgment, we say things that we later want to take back, we do things that we think later on are just plain dumb and stupid. There are things that we do and say that would make someone else's hair stand on end, and then later on we wonder why in the world would we ever do that. And it's because of those actions that other people have probably thought of you as less of a person, less of a human being, less of a friend, or less of a family member. It is something that is not easy to overcome. This is something that's not easy for the person who had been backstabbed by another person or has been talked down to by someone else. It is not easy to forgive somebody, especially if it's something that is significantly huge of an error. However, let's turn it around for just a second and let's talk about what that is like for the person who had committed that error, who had committed that mistake. Did we ever stop and think that for just a moment that perhaps it is the person that committed the error and knows that they committed the error that is feeling just as bad, if not worse, than the person that they committed the error on? Forgiveness is a virtue, and unfortunately in this day and age, forgiveness is something that has been forgotten in some realms. We have seen time and time again that people are encouraged to never forgive anybody for anything. And I think this is a dangerous thing to encourage because of the notion of holding grudges. What does that accomplish? What does that prove? What to me that proves is that perhaps the mistake is too much for you to forgive right away, and that can be understandable up to a point. However, think for a second of the amount of work that the person who made the mistake is trying to put in order to rectify the situation. Sometimes a mistake is huge, sometimes an accident is huge, sometimes an error is huge, but perhaps the effort to try to fix that mistake is just as powerful and just as strong as the mistake that was made. And when you hold a grudge for so long, when you hold a grudge and you choose to hold a grudge, what exactly does that accomplish? What exactly does that to the psyche? If you do not forgive, if you do not let go of a grudge, then you hold that hatred into yourself, you hold that animosity, and you carry that over to the next person. And then when they make the mistake, when they make the error, and then you scold them for that, and then you hold a grudge on them, and you now hold double the amount of hatred and double the amount of animosity because you cannot let go of certain things, and then you just move on to the next person. And then a pattern keeps developing, and it becomes even worse and worse and worse as the pattern goes on and on and on. We all have held grudges in our times. I certainly have. These are not the types of grudges that I should be keeping. These are the types of grudges that I should not hold on to. I have also made my share of mistakes though. These are the mistakes that I want to address today, because quite frankly, these are the mistakes and these are the grudges that I feel hold me back as a person and as a YouTuber and Twitch streamer to all of you. And I do want to perhaps use this video as a medium in order to address those things. And if this becomes too much, then I do apologize for that. I have been told that I apologize way too much, but at the same time, I feel as though I am a person who is willing and able to forgive and forget, and to try to rectify the mistakes that I have made. I think you have probably watched my first anxiety video. If you did not, then a link will be in the end screen at the end of this video. In this particular video, I addressed what I did to push people away in order to not have them hurt me, because I did not want to be alone again. And I still feel that fear. I still feel that fright. However, the manner of which I pushed them away was not necessary. That way that I pushed some people away from me in order to have them hurt me only made things worse. I let my fear and my anxiety and my anger take over for things that I could have probably just let go. These were silly things to get upset over. These were silly things in order for me to go on a rant about, or to say, hey, this is something that I'm gonna make a big deal out of. Sure, the things were vastly screwed up on both ends of the spectrum, but that does not excuse the actions that I took to let out that animosity and that hatred for the situation at that point in time. And of course, these are situations that confounded as my time on the internet kind of grew, and it went into real life as well. And let's just say that it too led to some pretty interesting moments, to say the very least. This was not me, and this has never been me. However, when you let the fears and the anxiety and the anger take over, anything is possible. Anything is achievable, but in the worst sense of the word. The worst part of a human being does come out when you let that fear and anxiety and panic and anger take over, especially when you have that cocktail of all those ingredients. Sadly, this is something that has carried over for me for many years. This is something that has caused me years upon years of anxiety, and it has led to some people not wanting to be around me. This is something that I have battled with for quite some time, and it is something that I feel as though has held me back for quite some time as well. I have tried to get rid of this particular side of me, and for the most part I have succeeded, but there have been some times in which that side kind of tries to peek back through, and it is something that is unpleasant. It is something that is horrible. You do not want to feel that way. You do not want to feel in a way that your back is against the wall and the only recourse is to do something that will make things utterly worse. And yes, I have gained new friends ever since I started on this YouTube journey and on the Twitch journey, but at the same time, I have made mistakes on that front as well. And these are recent mistakes that I feel has also held me back in terms of just focusing on the things that I want to do. I had once again let the fear and the anxiety and the panic take over, and I had done things that were less than stellar. Keep in mind that they're not as unstellar as the actions I did previously before I began on this journey, but they are mistakes nonetheless. I had taken the wrong path, and let's just say that I am still paying for that. That's why I want to focus on this particular video, because I want to apologize, and yes, there's that word again. I want to apologize for those actions. I want to make sure that people are aware that those actions were not the best actions at that point in time. They were not the actions that were reflective of who I am as a person. They were mistakes. They were errors that came because of frustration, or because of panic, or because of anger, or any one of the mixtures of those three. And because of that, I could have handled some of those situations a lot better and a lot differently. Now, there are some people who might just say, hey, he's just being fair weather about this as well, and that's fine. I know it might take some time for people to come to terms with that. It took me a while to come to terms with some other things that I have been privy to, and for those people who continue to hold grudges and continue to do things in the dark, I do hope that people are aware that that is not healthy. Pushing people away and turning your back to somebody in need is quite simply not the best recourse. And yes, I have done this myself. I have done these types of things before. Everybody has done them, and we are human. That's why we make mistakes. We want to learn from our mistakes, and I have learned from my mistakes, hopefully. Now, this is not saying that I'm not going to make mistakes in the future. By far and large, we are human, as I just said, and because of that, we are going to make mistakes. But here's the other thing I want to address. It is that, yes, we do make mistakes, and yes, it is a flaw in our system. It is a flaw in our computers, if you want to use technology terms in order to explain the human body. However, it does take a very strong person to admit that they have made a mistake, and it does take a very strong person in order to try to rectify that mistake. And it's because of that that we as people have to recognize that somebody is trying to make amends and to try to make sure that things are a little bit easier for them in order to try to rectify those mistakes if they are seriously attempting to. I like to think that I am seriously attempting to rectify my mistakes, although the rectifications might not be the best in the world. I do try my best in order to make sure that people are okay and that whatever happened in which made people not want to talk to me or not be around me are things that I can fix at some point in time. But it also takes even a stronger person to forgive that person, to be able to say, hey, I understand you made a mistake, and yes, I understand I made mistakes too, and we can become friends again. And that's probably the best thing ever. If you both see the error in your ways, like maybe it was a silly thing to get angry over, maybe the comment that one person made was a silly thing to get upset about, maybe cooler heads can prevail after a little bit of thinking, maybe you understood that maybe that wasn't the best recourse of action you could have taken, and then you say, you know what, let's get this all behind us. Water under the bridge, as it so seems. Now, I'm not saying forgiving mass murderers and child rapists are going to be a thing. That stuff I'm not saying. And we should understand that that is not what we're talking about. What we're talking about are things like if you call somebody a bad name, or you call somebody a slur by accident, and you didn't have enough time to catch yourself before you said it, and in a fit of rage, maybe you punched a wall or something like that, or you broke somebody's glass or something like that, or something along those lines. Or at one point in time, you stole money from somebody or somewhere, and you recognize that perhaps you made that mistake, you made that error, and you tried as hard as you can in order to rectify that situation, in order to fix that mistake. And that goes into forgiveness, and that goes into becoming a stronger person to forgive. Because let's be honest, not only is it harder for that person to think that the person they did that to hates them now, and there's no way in order to become friends again, but let's talk about maybe you made that mistake at one point in time. Think about the times that you made that error, the times that you made that mistake, or maybe you made a similar error somewhere and you had to wait and see whether or not that person was ever going to forgive you. Did they or did they not? If they did, then you have the opportunity to be just as good of a person as that person who forgave you. Learn from that person who forgave you and say, you know what, that is somebody who might be a strong person by letting go of a grudge, and I should be just as strong of a person by letting go of this grudge I have with this other person. Or maybe you believe somebody who told you about another person and you didn't let that person who was the accused explain their side of the story. Maybe you're both wrong, maybe they're all wrong, and maybe you believe the wrong person, or maybe you believe the right person, but maybe they're both right and wrong at the same time, and perhaps you could be the peacemaker in that scenario. There are a lot of things that we can talk about when it comes to forgiveness, about saying that we're sorry, but there is one final reason why I want wanted to address this on this video. And that is this. When my cousin died, I started thinking about all these things. It was very sudden. It was something that I didn't expect, because this was somebody who I wouldn't imagine in a million years not being able to go to, not being able to talk to, not being able to see, not being able to hear from again, because there was no way for her to be able to communicate, at least not on the physical realm. And the one thing that got to me more than anything, and the main reason why I wanted to make this, is because I had thought that if I had not made amends with certain people, and if I had not done something like this, then at one point everybody would just leave me, and I would truly be alone without anybody to really talk to, without anybody to really communicate with. I didn't have many local friends. I can't completely say that I do now, and I don't want to be completely alone because of family members who had passed on, and then I'm just left all alone without anybody to talk to, because I have made so many mistakes that it is impossible for anybody to really forgive me, even the most forgiving of people. I don't want that. I don't want that in my life. I don't want that as part of who I am, and that's why I want to hopefully use this video as a means of a beginning, maybe a new beginning. I know it's not easy. I know it's not easy for some people to say, hey, okay, everything's fine now, because there are some things that are not easy to forgive, and that's okay. But recognize the effort that somebody puts into trying to make things right. I hope this is a great start. I hope this is a start to something that might rectify situations, that might make some people unblock me from Twitter, admittedly, or unmute me if that is your prerogative. And as a aside, that if you have somebody who is asking for forgiveness and you are finding it hard for yourself in order to forgive them, think about the amount of effort they're putting into rectifying that situation, rectifying that issue, and maybe it does take a stronger person to forgive. And let this be my own forgiveness for those people who had in the past got me to a point where I didn't think I would be able to forgive anybody. Again, this is not to say that mistakes won't be made in the future, but I will do my best in order to deal with them in the best way possible and not try to just let my anger and fear and anxiety take over. And that when somebody does do me wrong, to be able to let somebody have a chance to rectify the situation and to at least get their side of the story, and to give them a chance to do what I think they should do. Don't hold on to grudges. Do not hold on to hatred and anger of a person who has wronged you, because that is never healthy for anybody. I should know. Let a person have a chance to forgive. Let a person have a chance to say that they're sorry, and let yourself have a chance to heal those broken wounds, to mend those broken bridges, to repair and replace those burned bridges. Sometimes that is a healing process. Sometimes that's all you need to be a bit happier in this world, and Lord knows that we need more forgiveness and more happiness in this world, because lately that is something that is sorely needed. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you very much for your time, and hopefully you have taken something away from this. My name is JD Shadow, and that just happened.
The moon is all we'll see. I'll ask you to